It has been a few days since the human Tixon started to stay with us. When asked where his bodyguards were, he simply answered that they were back with the fleet. Speaking of the human fleet, they were still invisible, but Tixon explained that they were now hiding behind our moon, as a precaution. It still baffles me as to why he decided to stay rather than go back to the comfort of his ship. 5 days ago, the theology sent a priest, demanding more tax, claiming it to be the will of God. After the mayor had informed the populace, no surprise, the people were outraged, but not at the demand. No, they were outraged that the mayor did not do a good job of trying to convince the theology to rescind their demand. It is scary what influence faith can have on people. I am thankful to the theology for protecting us in our hour of need, but this demand will surely starve my people. I am not one to be called a faithful follower. I have seen many things that I wish I could forget. I tried praying, hoping that the gods would listen and wipe the memories that haunt me. They did not. The people's rage began to subside, and now they had accepted the situation. They now worked as fast as they could in order to pay the ridiculous tax and avoid God's wrath. Unlike all the others, I had no land to farm. I pay the tax by slips or credit, as most people call it, and or barrels of beverages as substitutes. I needed to make more Nell if I ever wanted to pay the tax. At the crack of dawn, a few minutes before the sun would shine, I woke up, washed my face near the well behind my tavern. The dawn was quiet and serene. The sound of the wind, whispering, trees swaying and leaves rustling. The air was cold, and the night stars still shine behind clouds. I dressed myself and walked out to the bar towards the front door. Just as I was about to open it, I heard the door upstairs open. I turned around and saw Tixon rubbing his eyes. The day after the priest had visited, Tixon explained many things about human biology and physiology. Humans have a lot of quirky things that are different from us. Acid inside their stomachs that could melt metals, holes in their skin that would emit liquid, sweating, they call it, most gruesome of all, damaging their own muscle in order to enlarge it, and many more others. Among all the known species of the galaxy, humans, and our species, are the only ones that could consume alcohol. We are not able to drink as much as a human, as they had this organ they call a liver that detoxifies poison, meaning they are tolerant to common poison agents, but it was something we had in common. Tixon was not wearing anything other than an apparel that covers their legs and lower areas. They called it pants. We do have something similar to that, but it was only available to the nobility. We only wear something called a lion, a cloth that only covers our lower body up to our knees. The lion would be made of cheap materials. It was easily obtainable but also easily damaged. Tixon's body was akin to that of the Judah, a species employed by the theology as bodyguards and peacekeepers. His body bore scars of battle, cuts and punctures all over. I could tell Tixon was like me, a warrior, bearing scars of the battles he fought. "Good morning," Tixon says, as he stretches his body. I swear I could hear cracking sounds emanating from his body. "Where are you going?" Tixon asks. "I'm going to Tala's, need more saplings," I answered. "Cool, mind if I tag along? I'll follow you till Gruma's," Tixon asks. "Sure, I don't mind," I answer. He scurried inside his room and came out with a white shirt that had human writing, "Life is soup and I am a fork," with a picture of some kind of animal. I could read the language but not its meaning. I was also wearing what the human called a tunic secured with a vine. That was what he described it. The human often visited Gruma's. She's an old lady living on the outskirts of the city. She had his son and granddaughter living with her, but his son was forced to fight the war. The son pleaded with the theology to spare him, arguing that his mother and his daughter would not be able to tend to the field and feed themselves. Plead and beg as he did, he was still dragged away to fight in the war, leaving his young with his old mother. The villagers pitched in to help the poor old woman. I helped her with her garden often, picking weeds, planting crops, that kind of thing. Now, with the situation we were currently in, we could not spare time to help as much as we did before. The human walked with me as we watched the sun rise over the horizon, replacing the cold wind with a warm breeze. The night hid, as a new day had begun. Gruma's house was on the way to Tala, so I had no quarrel with him tagging along. If anything, I was grateful that he often visited the old lady. Tixon was strong, able to carry tons of materials and for longer periods of time. All were impressed by his feat of strength. People often go to him for favors, especially if it was involving something that needed hard labor. I had thought that Tixon would like compensation, but when I asked him, he simply said that the act of just doing a favor and seeing happy faces is enough reward for me. Of course, I had to tell the villagers not to use him too much, after all he was a guest. We were nearing Gruma's place, when out of nowhere, China jumped from an elevated position. It was dangerous to say the least. Luckily Tixon was there to catch her. "China! What are you doing? You could have hurt yourself," I shouted angrily. "Well, it's fine, big man is here to save her," she says. "That's right, I will be there to save you, but Edgar is correct," Tixon says. "China, do not do it again, you understand," he added. "Okay, I'm sorry," she says, head down and frown on her face. "Okay, good, Tixon, take care of her?" I ask. "Yep, no worries," Tixon answers. "So how about we go to Gruma and play?" Tixon asks China, as they skip and jump towards Gruma's house. "I'll see you later, Tixon," I shouted. Tixon waved his hand, as if to indicate he heard me. I walked the other way towards Tala's. The people were beginning to wake up as the morning sun rose. The people immediately tended to their farms and animals, maintaining and making sure nothing was stolen. From the distance I could already see Tala's home. She ran a small store, selling seeds, fruits, and especially Nell saplings. I opened the door. The inside was cozy, windows to let the morning light in, boxes full of fruits, seeds, but the box for the saplings was empty. There was a commotion in the back of the store. I was curious, so I headed there to see what the commotion was about. "Tala! Tala! What is going on?" I shouted. The door behind the countertops led to the back of the shop, where they call home. The door was unusually heavy. I had to put in some strengths, but it did eventually open. I found Janro by the slumped over, not moving. I immediately went to his aid. "Janro! Hey! Janro, wake up!" I shouted loudly, trying to wake him. Tala, presumably hearing my shouts, came from the back door of the house. He saw me trying to drag Janro into a more spacious place. She immediately ran to us. "Janro! Janro! What happened?" Tala asks. She was clearly panicking, not knowing what to do. I observed the room. I saw a fallen chair, below a shelf, and a clatter of stuff on the ground. He must have been trying to put something on the shelf before falling and losing consciousness. Tala was still shouting, worried about her younger brother. "I'll get him up." "Well, go to Gruma's," I said as I picked him up and rushed to Gruma's. It took only a few moments before we came to the front of Gruma's. I hadn't noticed that Janro was bleeding from his head. It was dripping and seeping onto my clothes. We knocked loudly and shouted Gruma's name. Tixon was the one who opened the door, and with just a glance he already understood why we came and let us in. Gruma's house was full of herbs and spices, but also medicinal plants. Tixon cleared the long table at the center of the room and took off to find Gruma. Moments later he came back with Gruma. "What has happened?" Gruma asked calmly. "I think he fell from a high place, bumped his head and lost consciousness," I explained. Tala was behind me, her face worried. She paced back and forth as Gruma started to look at the boy. Tixon was just behind her. China opened the door to the room, but before she could see what was happening, Tixon picked her up and told her that they would play in the garden for a bit. "Bring me a clean cloth, his head is bleeding, towelward as well, by the door, give it to me," she ordered. I immediately went and cut a bit of my clothes, while Tala got the herb. Gruma smashed the herb and put it in the wound and applied the cloth. Nothing we could do now, we must wait for him to wake up. I'll be able to assess him more then, Gruma explains. A few hours we waited for Janro to awaken. Tala herself stood by her brother, not moving. As soon as Janro awakened, all of us were relieved. Gruma assessed the child. She was a nurse during the war, and Gruma determined that he was fine but needed more time to rest. It was late in the afternoon when we reached their home. I tucked in Janro before meeting Tala by the fire. She looked towards me. "Thanks for helping me, Egger, I owe you one," Tala says. "It's no big deal, I promised him after all," I say. It was quiet for a while, only the crackle of the fire and creaking of the house. "Ah. Yes, what were you doing here earlier?" Tala asks. "I needed more saplings, so I came here to buy some," I answered. "I see, I have some." "It is not a lot, take them, free of charge," Tala insisted. "No, I'll pay, you need the money anyway," I insisted. "Thank you," Tala says. I paid for the saplings. It was a small amount, but it was better than nothing. I left Tala's home. She saw me out, waving and thanking me yet again. Once I went past Gruma's house. Tixon was outside, waiting for me. Tixon asked me about Janro. I told him he was fine and he too was relieved. When we came back to the tavern, Tixon immediately went upstairs to his room. It was a bit early for sleep, but he may be tired. I immediately started to turn the saplings into Nell. It took hours. It was now nighttime and I was tired and wanted to sleep. I washed myself before crawling into my bed. I thought about the planet, humans, and theology. I sighed and thought to myself, I just hoped that no one would be hurt when the theology eventually comes. 6 months later. It was time. We had done what we could, we just hoped it was enough. It was 6 months when the theology came and demanded double the tax, and for the past 6 grueling months we tilled the soil, day and night, backbreaking work just to speed up the growth of our crops. The theology had sent us a message a few hours before their arrival. It said to make sure that the tax was the right amount and to gather all the populace to the village center. All of us scrambled to find whatever we could among the trees, the bush, anything to add to the pile. All of us were worried that what we presented here today would not be enough. We feared what would happen to us if it was. The human Tixon had helped us greatly. Labor-intensive jobs were done by him. If he were not here to help, we would not have had this much of a harvest. Shame he was the only human able to help us. Some of us thought of asking for help from the humans, so we naturally turned to Tixon for aid. However, the humans were busy themselves. He explained that all the crew of his vessel were busy trying to find a way back home. We understand his position and we still were thankful to the humans, even if it was just Tixon. Before the theology arrived, we already had a place for Tixon to hide. The theology was now mere minutes away from orbiting our planet. The theology brought a sizable fleet for collection. 6 wing-class fighter ships, 2 medium warships, 1 transport, and 1 God-class destroyer. Overkill fleet for a mere tax collection, I thought to myself. All of the populace were already in the town square. Same as the last time, the mayor and I were by the ports, ready to receive the priest. Their shuttle landed. I noticed it was bigger than the last time. The door hissed and we bowed our heads low. The first to come out was a Judah, a hulking behemoth of steel and muscle. Their skin was tough, and 4 eyes were the same as us but far larger than us. They stand upright with their tail as support, helmets, and armor covering most of their body. The Judah was modified, a weapon replacing one of his hand tentacles, connected to some kind of battery to his back. For limbs different from the priest who has many. 20 Judahs came out before the priest, riding a golden chair carried by servants. The priest stopped only for a moment, before telling his servants to move. We followed behind them. As I looked behind me, more and more Judah were coming out of the ship. This worries me. At the town square, the populace was surrounded by Judah. Some had never seen one before, so I had to calm them down. Something was wrong, I could feel it. It scratched at the back of my head. What could it be? The mayor was summarizing the contents of our tax pile. For a few minutes, he listed all the items and crops we were able to provide as tax. As our mayor was done speaking, the priest walked and left his seat. This was the same priest that came to us 6 months prior. He looked around, scanning all of us. "Mr. Mayor, was that all you could procure?" The priest asks. Why yes, your lordship, that was all we could produce, made from the sweat, tears, and blood of my people," the mayor answered. "I see," the priest says. He scanned us again. I do not know what he was up to, but it was fishy. "Is something the matter, your lordship?" the mayor asks. "You all look quite healthy for sacrificing blood, sweat, and tears." "No. Not a sign of struggle," said the priest. The mayor was puzzled. Not knowing how to answer the question, he was silent. "Tell me, Mr. Mayor, if 5 pests came into a barn, one tripped a trap alerting the farmer, the second awakened a Roger, cat-like creature, the third startled a farm animal, the fourth fell into a water basin, and the last simply led the way. All of them died, who is to blame?" the priest asks the mayor. I don't understand," the mayor says, confused. "Who is to blame for their deaths? A simple question." The priest repeats the question, turning to the mayor. "Themselves?" The mayor answered. "Good answer, but nay, it is the one who led them there, he is to blame." The priest answered, walking towards the mayor. "Now tell me, in this scenario, who is to blame? When you fail to obey our God's words." The priest shouted angrily. The Judah guards seized the mayor, holding both his hands behind his back. They pushed him to the ground and made him kneel towards the crowd that was panicking and screaming. God's words are absolute, those that fail or defy them will taste the wrath of God. The priest shouted. He nodded to one of the Judah, who raised his weapon to the mayor's head. A loud shot was heard. We all ducked and closed our eyes, covering our auditory organs, all except me. I saw one of the Judah that was holding him, hold his weapon to his head, and fire. All in a single moment, his body immediately went limp, green blood flowing from the hole in his head, his brain splattering to the floor. The memories came back to me. Soft dirt, and sounds of artillery pounding my position. To my right were men operating a mounted weapon, only for a moment as a shell obliterated them. The sound of a man screaming as his leg was missing, asking me for help. I could do nothing but stare, fear gripping my whole body, unable to move. I turned my gaze to my left. It was a youngling laying on the ground, far too young, a few cycles old maybe. His helmet was gone. I did not know where it was. A single hole centered on his head was what got him. Green blood dripped from the wound. He was dead, but his eyes moved and suddenly looked at me. I snapped from my trance. My body moved before my mind. All that I could think about was to charge that damn Judah. I was boiling in rage. I sprinted my fastest and I jumped the damn Judah. A flurry of punches came next. I beat that damn Judah as if my life depended on it. This took only moments before another Judah beat at the back of the head. I lost consciousness. I awoke only to see a gruesome sight. Gruma, China, Janro, and 2 others were kneeling in front of me, in a line. Behind them was the priest, holding a weapon. The people were panicking, begging to stop. Some tried to move through the Judah that were holding the populace back. You people have defied God's will, you have failed to meet his expectations, this is your punishment, the priest proclaimed, as he shot one of them in the head. Immediately they went limp. I could hear the people, begging, pleading, and crying. I could hear Tala shouting, "Please, take me instead, not my brother please," over and over again, falling on deaf ears. Another shot rang, and another body slumped to the ground. I tried to get up but was immediately pressed down by a Judah. I could see the priest behind Janro readying to aim. I shouted as loud as I could, trying to crawl my way to him. My fingers bled as I tried, tears falling from my eyes, dozens of thoughts racing through my mind. Bang! With another loud shot, Janro's body, like the others, slumped forward limp. His sister was right in front of him, splattered in his own brother's blood, unable to utter a word in shock. I shouted in grief, breaking my voice, tears flowing from my eyes. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I've failed you, brother, I've failed you, I promised to protect them, I've promised to protect them. I've failed another yet again, all my life I have failed to keep those that were important to me. My wife, my son, and now my promise. God, is this my fate? To keep failing? Is this supposed to mean something? Is this meant for me? Is this to be my whole life? Answer me, damn it. I thought to myself. The priest walked towards China and pointed the gun to her head. I pray to any god out there to hear me, please save us, I would gladly offer my life to you, do anything you wish, worship you, just please, save us from this madness. Pull that fucking trigger and I swear I'll make feel pain making you wish you were dead, a voice says. It was unfamiliar, but the language was human. I looked up, and I saw them. Clad in black and dark as night, the bodyguards, they were the ones who Tixon told us had retreated to their fleet. Why were they here? He was holding some kind of weapon, some kind of melee weapon that glowed blue. The priest was shocked. He flinched in pain as if something hot was pressing on him. The sword was pointed into the lowest part of his bulb. Naturally, all the Judah aimed their weapons at the intruder. What is this heresy? Demons! You people shelter demons, the priest shouted, turning to the people. The priest eyed the human bodyguard. What are you? The priest added. I am about to be your worst fucking problem, he answers. Kill him. The priest commanded. Shoot and this bulbous fucker will lose his head, the human bodyguard says, closing the distance of his weapon to the priest. Ha! Even if you kill me, you will not live long. Did you think you could take on 50 of my best men alone? The priest asks boastfully. No, not really, that is why I bought friends, the human bodyguard answers. For more other bodyguards appeared, uncloaking behind a few Judah, already aiming various weapons at their heads. They were still outnumbered and surrounded. Is that all you got? You're gonna need more than that, the priest boastfully says. Nah, we're enough, the human bodyguard says confidently. A few moments of silence followed before one of the Judah shot first, and chaos ensued. The bodyguards took out a few of the Judah before cloaking back. The people in the square hid, ducked, and laid down for cover. Shots rang and projectiles covered the air, and we were in the middle of it all. I saw how the human bodyguards fight. They would cloak and decloak on will to confuse the enemy and take shots from cover. The human who had the sword charged forward and sliced a Judah in half by the torso. The Judah were panicking and shooting wildly, but some of their projectiles did hit the humans, but a blue hue appeared a mere inches from them. It absorbed the projectile, dissipating the shot as if it was never there. The humans were fast, frighteningly so. They would run from cover to cover in mere moments, jump and run over buildings, dropping from above. They kill with cruelty I had never seen before, rage so potent and deadly. All I could think was why. Why did they come here? Why did they help us? What was their goal? Their weapons were destructive. The fire rate is like that of a mounted weapon but possesses the power of more than that of a rifle. Their weapons were a kind of technology we had never seen before. Human weapons would tear through both flesh and metal and leave a burning mark on its target. One bodyguard would gun down multiple opponents, all the while dodging and moving projectiles shot by others. The Judah, a warrior in their own right, stood their ground and showed courage for a while, but they too had their breaking point. Some saw the inevitable and started to turn and run only to be met with an uncloaking human, their weapons pointed to their head. It was clear the humans wanted none of them to live. When the battle was over, none of the 5 humans were even scratched. The ground was soaked with Judah's blood, their bodies lying dead on the ground. 5 humans destroyed a contingent of 50 Judah warriors. A feat none in the galaxy could even dream of. I have never heard of a species so adept at taking lives. We had our wars and battles, but humanity was on another level. Fear was what I felt. I feared the humans who came, for if 50 were able to do this much, I wonder what 1,000 ships worth of men could do. The priest was dumbfounded and shocked. He tried to run, but the humans caught up to him in mere moments. They apprehended the priest, surrounding him, and putting him in some kind of binding agent that wrapped around his torso. "Unhand me, demon!" The priest shouts. "Why should I? Got anywhere to be a priest?" the human asks. "I am a priest of theology. My voice is the voice of God. My actions are the will of God. You are not worthy to even be in my vicinity," said the priest. "Then tell me, priest, is this your God's will too?" the human bodyguard asks. He gestured towards the 3 slumped bodies on the ground, their heads in their pool of blood. "They are of no concern, they are simply faithless, they all are. We took them under our wing and gave them a planet. They say they are loyal and yet they failed to even simply pay for the tax we demand. They fight against the will of God," says the priest. "You are sick," says the human bodyguard. "I still have a fleet orbiting this planet, they are monitoring me. If I die, they will bombard the planet with you in it," the priest says, threatening the humans. The priest pulled out a comms device connected to the fleet orbiting the planet, but before he could, the captain spoke first. "Cap," the priest got cut off. "My lordship, we detected over 1,000 ships coming from the moon. We do not know the design nor the emblem. Orders please," the captain says. "Well, kill them, they will know the might of our guns. After that send more men to the planet and retrieve me," the priest commanded. "Yes, your lordship," the captain says. The theology fleet began to show its side, arming and readying the weapons for ship combat, but surprisingly the human fleet stopped just a few hundred kilometers away. "My lord, they have stopped, what do we do?" the captain asks. The priest, hearing this, looked towards the human bodyguard around him. "It looks like your fleet is afraid. Our guns are strong, our armor tough. Surrender now, demon, or face death," the priest threatened. The humans were not moving. The priest thought they were scared. He could not see their faces under their helmets. He determined that their fleet could easily destroy the humans. The humans were intimidated by my fleet, meaning they were weaker than ours. How wrong he was. The flagship of the theology ship exploded and then erupted into flames. The other vessels were confused and scared and turned to run, but were quickly hit by a projectile that destroyed their engines. The entire theology fleet was either destroyed or disabled, floating in the great dark that is the void. "You were saying?" the human bodyguard asks. The priest was left speechless, unable to comprehend what was happening. "This is the very first battle of the humans, our would-be saviors and conquerors.